This is Whistleblower 2 on the same day. Please listen.
Read one sentence from them. Mr. Atkinson wrote, I set forth the reasons for my concluding that the subject matter involved in the complainant's disclosure not only falls within the DNI's jurisdiction, but relates to one of the most significant and important of the DNI's responsibilities to the American people. This is what's being withheld from Congress right now.
House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff today quoting the intelligence community's Inspector General about this whistleblower complaint, which is now consuming Washington, right? It's a complaint that reportedly concerns President Trump. The Trump administration is basically refusing to treat the complaint as if it is a whistleblower complaint under law, which means they are not protecting the whistleblower from potential retaliation or even prosecution here. They're also refusing to hand the complaint over to Congress, which whistleblower law requires. Congressman Schiff joins us now live. Mr. Chairman, it's really good to have you with us tonight. I know it's a very busy time.
Thanks for having me.
We just spoke with Shane Harris of the Washington Post about their new reporting that this whistleblower complaint may center on the nation of Ukraine. Combined with earlier reporting from the Post and others that might suggest that this complaint has something to do with presidential communication with a foreign leader, potentially with the president of Ukraine, something else having to do with that country. Just have to ask you, as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, does that jive at all with what you know? Do you have any further information about the nature of the complaint?
I can't comment completely in answer to your question. We haven't received the complaint. Some of what we've been able to determine has been based on what the Inspector General and the Director of National Intelligence have told us, and dividing sort of between the lines. But I can tell you this with certainty, and that is the Inspector General found this complaint to be credible after doing an investigation, found it to be urgent, and found something else which has not really been focused on, and that is that this does not involve a policy disagreement. So a lot of people have been speculating, does this involve a presidential communication, does it not? And if it does, doesn't the president have a right to be confidential? This doesn't involve some policy disagreement. This involves an allegation of serious wrongdoing, something that the Inspector General felt needed to be presented to Congress, was squarely within the jurisdiction of the Director of National Intelligence, and it is unprecedented for a director to withhold that information from Congress. And I just want to say what's at stake here and why this is so serious for us. The Intelligence Committee in both House and Senate do their work in closed session because we're dealing with classified information. But the result of that is outside stakeholders don't get to weigh in, don't get to correct the record, don't get to say that the intelligence agency representation on this isn't accurate. We rely on the agencies to self-report when they have problems, and much of the time they do. But when they don't, we are totally reliant on whistleblowers, which means if you can nullify that process, which the Department of Justice is effectively doing, it means the ability to do oversight is just crippled. And it means that serious problems, urgent problems that affect our national security go unaddressed like this one. And it means that other whistleblowers who are watching, and I want to say to the whistleblower, if the whistleblower is watching you tonight, that we are grateful for their courage in coming forward. We are going to do everything we can to make sure this urgent issue is addressed and that you are protected.
If this whistleblower, whether or not he or she is watching tonight, and if you are, hi. If this whistleblower does want to come directly to your committee and to the Senate Intelligence Committee because the Trump administration is otherwise trying to throttle this at the level of the DNI. When I'm looking at the comments of the Inspector General, and I've been reading transcripts of your own remarks on this today, reading them closely, trying to figure this out, it seems to me like the whistleblower should be able to legally and securely come to you directly with his or her complaint, provided that the sort of channel for them to appropriately and legally do so is open. Is that channel available to them? Is there a way that you can directly tell the whistleblower on TV tonight, here's how you reach me, here's how you connect legally with our committee?
Look, we would love to talk with the whistleblower directly, and it was certainly our expectation when we wrote this statute that there would be an opportunity for anyone in the IC to come to the committee and expose wrongdoing, and that's always been the case because whistleblower complaints, even when they were found not credible, even when they were found not urgent, were referred to our committee and the whistleblower was told you could go talk to the committee. Here, the director is refusing to tell the whistleblower that. In fact, the Department of Justice is effectively telling the whistleblower, you're not covered,
Yeah.
which means that there is a real risk even in coming to Congress, and that is obviously a supreme problem. I would love to be able to say that the president won't be vindictive, that the Justice Department won't be vindictive, but I can't make that assurance if the Department of Justice is taking the position, you're not covered. And you know, the people who do come forward, they're assured that if they do, their complaint will get to Congress. And so a lot is riding on this. If those promises are hollow, then it means these important sources of information about wrongdoing are going to dry up.
I want to weigh in here towards what he just said. First of all, there's a difference in somebody being a snitch, somebody being a narc, versus somebody being a whistleblower. And one may say, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between a snitch, a narc, and a whistleblower? Okay? It goes up in rank and file. All right? If you're talking about turning somebody in because you know they got narcotics, if you're talking about turning somebody in because you know that they're having foreplay with a minor, male or female, then that reaches the level pertaining to either being a snitch or a narc. But whenever you're talking about somebody turning somebody in that is on this level of degree that reaches the alphabet arena in regard to the CIA, the FBI, the ATF, basically all the alphabetical arena high crime areas, then you're reaching, this is my interpretation of being a whistleblower, then you're reaching a degree of being a whistleblower. Now, does that mean that somebody can be working in an office and knowing that, let's say, the CEO is pocketing money and they're sending all their money across seas to a Swiss bank account? Does that mean that that person is considered a snitch or a narc versus a whistleblower? Once more, it's the degree of the crime that you have walked off into. You know, if you're talking about somebody, let's say like the CEO of Chesapeake Oil and Gas that got caught red-handed towards misappropriating funds. Chesapeake and the board members went up against this guy and basically made an example out of it. It just so happens before it all ended, they don't know if it was malicious activity involved, but just so happens that the CEO had a terrible, terrible accident. The car exploded and him being in it, going down the interstate. I don't know if there was foul play. I don't know if they ever determined that there was any foul play or not, but it was big money involved. It was hundreds of millions of dollars that was involved in that particular ordeal. If somebody on the inside would have turned that particular person in to the board members, then I would consider that being a whistleblower, because you're talking about a high crime, you're talking about something that reaches a level of possibly life without parole. The same situation, and I don't mean to be expressing my hardships to my viewers, but the same type of degree falls within what that I have been a part of pertaining to accountability issues in regard to what the FBI as well as the ATF in Texas done in a crime, and it was a crime. You can say whatever yet you want to say pertaining to leading people on or entrapping people, but in a lot of states to this day it's still illegal to entrap people, especially weak-minded people, in such of a degree that led into another ordeal that happened in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, that if you count both cases together, almost comes up to 300 people's lives. 300 people's lives is a lot of lives, okay? And it doesn't matter if it was a year ago, 10 years ago, or 100 years ago. There is no statute of limitations on a high crime pertaining to a capital punishment crime. If there was gross negligence upon either part, in which I believe that it was, and I believe that it can be proved, then the authorities need to go back and re-examine case number 1 as well as case number 2, and the general public needs to know the truth about both matters. The same way with the investigation pertaining to the JFK assassination. 25 years ago, I was under the impression pertaining to the JFK assassination that the authorities knew just exactly who, what, when, and why. But because there were so many people's lives that was entangled into that corruption, they put a lid on it and covered it up and sealed it, and it wasn't supposed to be revealed until just about a year or so ago. Now, the information that got revealed to the general public, I'm sure even that got censored to the degree of national interest, and to this day we still don't actually know the whole concept of the who, the what, the when, and the why pertaining to the JFK. There's a lot of people that may think that they know after re-examining the paperwork, but the fact of the matter is there's still people living today that I truly believe had something to do with the JFK assassination. Possibly 25 more years from now, after all those people is dead and gone, then they'll make a new discovery, there'll be a new documentary, and all of a sudden, oh, we forgot about this. This is what really happened right here. And you knew it all along. You knew it all along. My point is this. There's different degrees of somebody being a snitch, somebody tattletaling on somebody. You remember whenever you went to school, if you got caught tattletaling on somebody, that was considered a big no-no. Oh, all your buddies and all your friends looked down on you because you tattletaled. Tattletale, tattletale, remember that? Well, as we get older, we realize that it's not so much of being just a tattletale towards wanting to get somebody in trouble. It's a matter of staying within the checks and the balances of justice. And whenever you no longer are in the checks and the balances of the justice system, not just the justice system that man has designed, but the justice system that God has designed, that's whenever God will raise the umbrella towards no longer protecting us like he used to, regardless whether he was protecting us from crime, protecting us from diseases, protecting us from solar flares, protecting us from hurricanes, protecting us from tornadoes, protecting us from divorces, protecting us from being over enticed to the point that we have to declare bankruptcy. Whenever you reach a point of justice, there's two different justices. There's man's justice and then there's God's justice. Okay? Whenever God reaches that point of saying enough is enough, similar to how he done Adam and Eve, similar towards how he done in the era of other cultures, and there was many cultures that you got to read between the lines of what actually occurred in the Old Testament as well as the New, and plus you got to take into account of other books that was historically ancient facts of what actually occurred during that era. In other words, there's more to history other than just the Bible. Now, the history of the Bible is the biggest core of the main history, as far as I am concerned. But there's other branches of other people that documented things and wrote books, and it's just so widespread, it's just unbelievable. Towards it, there was a lot more to history other than just the Bible. That's the point that I'm trying to make. But the main point that I'm trying to make here is pertaining to being a whistleblower. A whistleblower, to me, is somebody that has reached that upper level towards declaring a crime that has been committed either by high levels of government officials or something that is pertaining to capital punishment. And of course, if you add the lives up pertaining to the deaths of those that died during the Oklahoma incident, as well as those that died during the Waco incident, the Mount Carmel incident, if you add both of those together, comes up to a little over 250 lives. Not far from 300. And I'm sure there was a lot of lives that wound up dying premature deaths because of the Oklahoma bombing. That probably will never hit the history records of people that lost eyes, people that lost their ears, lost their eardrums, people that obtained severe damage in their head, or they lost and mangled a leg or an arm. There was lots of injuries in the Oklahoma incident. So whenever I brush off on 300 lives, I don't think that's over dramatizing by putting both accounts together. And I don't think it's over dramatizing towards the degree of severity towards me, myself and I, the individual that's talking to you right now, putting myself in the same place as this individual that has disclosed this information about a secret conversation pertaining to the President of the United States towards a classified conversation that was supposed to have been withheld from the general public, but because he or she finds it to be contrary to the interest of the American people, he or she is coming forth with this particular charge. And that's exactly how it needs to be looked upon. It needs to be looked upon as a charge. Now, rather not Congress, rather not certain committees get in behind it and support it and say this was validated in the right way and it shouldn't have never been said, or it shouldn't have never been promised, or it shouldn't have never happened, will be up to various panels and various groups of people that look at this. But my particular situation, going back to me again, once more, I'm not trying to brush off on this. My particular situation automatically got slung out there in the eyes of the general public whenever Channel 9, Channel 13, Channel 11, basically all the Oklahoma City news decided that they was going to make a pincushion out of me simply because in 2009 I was over there investigating the truth about there actually being a cover-up. To this day, I have not got any apology from the Oklahoma authorities pertaining to the Oklahoma governor or the Oklahoma lieutenant governor or any of the sort coming from the state of Oklahoma. Neither nor have I gotten any type of apology beginning at high-ranking officials here in the state of Tennessee pertaining to the governor, the lieutenant governor, and on and on and on down. I've got a remarkable story to tell the general public pertaining to how that my Constitution, how that my rights have been violated again and again and again ever since I stood out into the eyes of the general public in 1989. 1989, 1999, 2009, now it's 2019. It's been 30 years. 30 years that I've been beat up on. I've been snobbed. I've been attacked. I've been neglected. I've had various judges that was biased towards dereliction of duty, that didn't want to believe any of my testimony. This has been an ongoing event. Once more, you got to look at the who, the what, the when, and the why. And you got to figure out that there's certain people right here within arm's throwing distance of where I live in this county that I've lived in since 1967, that was a part of this biblical spiritual conspiracy, as well as state officials, as well as federal officials. That was part of this spiritual, biblical conspiracy that actually did begin in the White House during the Reagan and the Bush administration. And it went from the White House to the church house, to the church house, to the schoolhouse, and now it's flowed all the way down to the outhouse. In other words, now the whole general public is beginning to know the story in behind the windmill findings towards the founder of what has happened and where he has been and what brought him to this particular stage in his life towards discovering and rediscovering the truth about not only others but about himself, and about how that things have been just totally misrepresented and misunderstood pertaining to the whole hidden agenda that wasn't hidden as far as I am concerned, but the motive that drove me to doing some of the things that I done during the time that I done them. Let's listen to the rest of this because it's very, very interesting. I don't want to get off course pertaining to this particular case that they're talking about as far as this particular whistleblower. And it does rattle the interest of the American people, of those that are concerned about the facts. Now, you got a lot of people out there that don't care about the facts. They don't care about the truth. They don't want to hear about the truth. They don't want to hear about facts. They live in la land, and as far as they're concerned, as long as you leave them alone, out of sight, out of mind, they could care less about all this other stuff because it's not affecting their life directly. Whenever it starts affecting their life directly, then and only then, they may become concerned towards what is actually going on in the big picture. But as long as it's out of sight, out of mind, as long as it's not bothering them, They could care less. And that's one of the reasons why America has taken such of a step backwards, is because of so many people being not interested in the big picture. And we relied upon people to take care of the big picture, but they didn't take care of the big picture. And now it's put us in the position that we're in today, towards watching these pillars of society crumbling. And this is just another crumbling pillar as far as I'm concerned.
Congressman Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Sir, thank you so much for your time tonight. I know this is an ongoing, fast-developing story. We'd love to have you back whenever we've got further developments to talk about, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, much more to come tonight. Stay with us.
They're very tasty.
And started breaking a story about allegations of rampant, basically institutionalized sexual abuse carried out by a very powerful movie executive named Harvey Weinstein. That story set off a movement that touched not only movie executives, but actors, comedians, musicians, chefs, doctors, senators, casino owners, attorneys general, and. Now those two reporters, Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey, have written one of the world's great books about journalism, which is also the story of how they broke that story. And I'm just going to read a little bit because I want you to have a little idea of what I mean. This is Jodi Kantor tracking down a critical internal memo from inside the Weinstein organization that details basically Weinstein's sexual abuse. Quote, Jodi reached into her bag, drew out a printout she'd prepared a few hours before, and passed it to the Weinstein executive. Jodi explained that this was an account she'd heard from a well-known actress. It described how the woman had arrived unsuspecting to a meeting at a hotel room with Harvey Weinstein. To her surprise, she'd been shown upstairs instead. When she got there, Weinstein was waiting in a bathrobe and asked for a massage. He tried to pressure her into sex by saying he could help her career. She fled. As Jodi had guessed, the executive appeared aghast at hearing this. She told him this actress was far from alone, that she and Megan Twohey had heard variations on the same narrative again and again. Jodi and Megan didn't know how many women had these kinds of stories about Weinstein, but based on what they were hearing, they believed the number might be very high. Jodi asked the executive again for the memo. He had already read her a few quotes, which she had jotted down, but she wanted to understand the document better. Could he pull it up again on his phone? He started to read the memo aloud, then paused. He said, I'm going to pay a visit to the little boy's room. He threw Jodi his phone, opened the email with the memo. He rose from the table and left her alone.
I put this story the same as O.J. Simpson. Everybody knows that this guy was a creep. He was a pervert. He was a rich pervert. And he felt like that he could buy any and everybody off. It just so happens he got caught with his hand in a cookie jar, similar to O.J. Simpson. And there's other people that he was associated with, I won't mention no names, that was just as perverted as he was. Once more, I put this story that you're listening to and reading about and knowing anything pertaining to him supposedly hanging himself, in which I'm still in doubt of. But I put this story the same as O.J. Simpson. Everybody knows the truth. It's just a matter of being able to defiably defy it with no doubt whatsoever.
Later that night, when they read the
Urgent complaint. The White House and the DOJ advising the nation's top intelligence agency not to share that urgent complaint with Congress. Democrats are furious. Intel Committee Chairman Adam Schiff saying the system is broken.
If, in a matter within the jurisdiction of the Director of National Intelligence, you have an employee of that community who follows the law and makes a complaint, and it is possible for the subject of that complaint to essentially quash the complaint or keep it from Congress, then this system is badly broken.
Congressman Mike Quigley a Democrat on the committee, blasting the DOJ and the Attorney General, Bill Barr.
Once more, we're dealing with something that we already know. We're fully aware that this government is no longer performing to its professional duties that the general public demands for this government to follow under the guidelines of. We know that the system is broken of being basically $23 trillion in debt. I personally believe that what we're seeing, looking at it through a darkened glass, smoke screen per se, I kind of look at this being America's last hurrah. And because it's gotten so far out of hand, with so much corruption and so many crooked judges and crooked lawyers and crooked politicians, there's really no way to repair the system other than to recreate a new system. And the only way to recreate a new system is by defaulting on the old system and people coming together in recreating a new system. That's where we are. It's just like Rome. Rome did not fall because of its combatantness from the outside in, but Rome fell from the inside out. Now the question is this: if Rome had the same technology that we have today pertaining to cameras, satellite, the internet, telephones, electricity, running water, etc., which they did have running water. And to some degree they did have electricity pertaining to batteries. Pulled from the Egyptians. I watched the History Channel a little bit too. But you have to ask the question, if Rome was us, right today with our technology, then, during the time that they went through what they went through, would have Rome have been smart enough to identify their problem, their internal cancer, and would Rome have been smart enough to have recreated itself on the world stage to the point that today Rome would still be a massive dynasty that no one, I repeat, no one could challenge or compete with? Would have Rome taken other alternative changes in how they handled their politics? I guess that's one of those questions that we'll truly never have the true answer to. I mean, you can speculate and believe that they probably would, but then again, you don't never know. They may not have, because some things is written in stone for it to occur. It's called destiny. And some things is meant to fall, and some things is meant to rise. Just like the Bible talks about, there's a season for everything. There's a season for planting. There's a season for harvesting. There's a season for peace. There's a season for war. There's a season for living. There's a season for dying. Every facet of every known entity that we can put our finger on basically has a season. That is the truth. Now, whether or not you want to accept the truth, or if you're even concerned about the truth, is once more the $64,000 question.
Mr. Barr and the Department of Justice's job, in their mind, is to protect the president, and it doesn't matter. That violates the laws.
All right, well, that gentleman right there, Congressman Quigley, is going to be here in just a moment. I'm going to speak with him. The president tweeting this morning, that virtually anything he speaks on the phone to a foreign leader, he understands there may be many people listening from agencies in this country and the other country. Going on to tweet, knowing all of this, is anybody dumb enough to believe that I would say something inappropriate with a foreign leader while on such a potentially heavily populated call? I would only do what is right anyway, and only do good for the USA. And going on to claim presidential harassment. The president asking whether anyone is, his words, dumb enough to believe that he would say something inappropriate to a foreign leader. Okay. Let's review, shall we? This is the president who gave classified information to the Russian ambassador and foreign minister in the Oval Office the day after he fired James Comey, in part for not stopping the Russia investigation, leading to a secret mission to extract one of the highest level covert sources from inside the Russian government. That mission, driven by fears over that Oval Office meeting. This is the president who stood next to Vladimir Putin in Helsinki and took his word over our own intelligence community, saying he did not see any reason to believe Russia was behind interference in our 2016 election.
My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
This is the president who has gone to great lengths to hide details of what he's discussed in private talks with Putin, and even shared a joke about Russia's continuing election meddling with the Russian president. This is how the president uses his power when he believes his word is law. Is anybody dumb enough? A lot more for you tonight on our breaking news. New revelations about that explosive whistleblower complaint about the president's communication with a foreign leader, now reportedly involving Ukraine. We're going to dig into all of the latest details with Shane Harris, who broke this story for the Washington Post and CNN's Evan Perez. Next.
Order now.
Washington Post reporting the whistleblower complaint at the center of the showdown between Congress and the executive branch involves Ukraine. Joining me now is Shane Harris, who broke this story for the Post. CNN's Evan Perez with us as well. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Shane, your reporting says that the whistleblower complaint involves Ukraine. What can you tell us?
Well, right now what we know is that, building on our reporting from yesterday, that there is an allegation of some kind of promise that the president made to a foreign leader. It would appear that that does involve the country of Ukraine. We don't know precisely the allegation that the whistleblower is making in terms of what it was that he saw with regards to the president's contacts or interactions with people in that country that led him to file this complaint with the Inspector General. But we do know some interesting things about the timing. This complaint was filed about 2.5 weeks, so not very long, after the president had a phone call with the president of Ukraine. And there was a lot of activity going on in that period as well that eventually came to light about the administration's efforts to slow roll funding to Ukraine as part of the military aid package. And then, of course, the whole issue around the Biden investigation. So there's a lot of dots that are kind of lining up here with this story.
Okay, so listen, all of this is happening, Shane, as the House Democrats are looking into whether President Trump and his attorney Rudy Giuliani were attempting to get the Ukrainian government to help the president's election campaign. Now, could that be connected to the promise that the president made to a foreign government?
We don't know, but I think that's an important question to ask, and certainly one that I think
Say
we're looking
alleged
into.
promise, but sorry, go on.
Yeah. Right. Well, the question is, when you talk about somebody making a promise to somebody, I mean, certainly at least in the context we think about President Trump, or maybe any president for that matter, what are you you're promising something in return for something, we might speculate there. So there's a real question around, is there some kind of negotiation or conversation going on? But these are some of these events that appear to be at least happening around the same time, whether they're coincidental or not. That's a lot of what's driving the questions for us, and I think for members of Congress as well now.
Okay, Evan, let's bring you in here. Because did you see the Rudy Giuliani interview?
Oh, we saw it.
All right, so let's review here.
Yeah.
Rudy Giuliani just admitted to Chris that he did ask Ukraine's government to investigate Biden. Listen to the heated exchange and then we'll talk.
Did you ask the Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden?
No, actually I didn't. I asked the Ukraine to investigate the allegations that there was interference in the election of 2016 by the Ukrainians for the benefit of Hillary Clinton, for which there already is a
You never
court
asked
finding.
anything about Hunter Biden. You never asked anything about Joe Biden.
The
and
only
his
thing
role
I
with the
asked about
prosecutor.
Joe Biden is to get to the bottom of how it was that Lutsenko, who was appointed, dismissed the case against Antak.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did.
You just said you didn't.
Evan, he denied it and then he admitted it.
Right. I mean, that's how it goes with Rudy. I mean, Rudy has publicly said that he thought this was something that the Ukrainians needed to look into. The idea that there was some kind of quid pro quo that happened on the part of Joe Biden. During the time that he was vice president, they was pushing to fire a prosecutor as some kind of favor to try to essentially help his son and his own business dealings in Ukraine. So we've heard this, some of these public statements from Rudy. So it was kind of interesting to see him sort of try to navigate that tonight. But he ended up in exactly where he has before.
I know. Honestly, it reminds me of it's weird, but it does, this phony phone call on the Howard Stern show where the person will say to the radio person or whoever they're calling, you know your show is terrible, but I love it, I get a lot out of it. Right. You know you're a liar, but you're telling the truth. And the person just kind of goes along with it. It's just, it's unbelievable. Rudy Giuliani will say one thing in one sentence in one breath, and then
contradict himself in another. These are the people that are in control of our lives. These are the people that are making lifelong decisions that will affect all of our lives in some form or fashion, either in a negative way or in a positive way. These are the people that, as far as I am concerned, a switch has overloaded to the point that now they actually have told so many lies they don't know what lie to cover up the first lie with, so they just continue to lie, hoping that nobody is intelligent enough to figure out the lies. This is where we are, folks. This is where we are. I want to stop this. I don't want to hear nothing else tonight about this because it's really become very irritating to me. It's a heartbreak. But this is where we are pertaining to leadership in this country. And it's absolutely sickening. It sickens my soul. It sickens my spirit. It sickens my finances. It sickens my health. It sickens my soul. It sickens the very essence of my great grandfather and great grandmother towards what that they was willing to sacrifice for, and your ancestors that was willing to sacrifice for, that has put us where we are today, towards basically a bunch of insanity, insulting, corrupt leaders that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. Don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. You know, whenever all this kind of started out with Donald Trump, he really had a lot of good incentives pertaining to make America great. Let's attack the drug culture. Let's put up a wall pertaining to all the illegal immigrants and the drugs. But I've not seen nothing moved upon pertaining to the gun issue out of this federal government. I've seen very, very little involvement regarding the drug crisis, the homeless crisis. Though Donald Trump did make a move on the veterans to be able to give them license to be able to go to whatever doctor that they wanted to go to, and it didn't necessarily have to be in a VA. You know, he's done some good things. Donald Trump has done some good things, and at first it started out kind of, what would be the right definition to put this in? It started out being interesting in an entertainment type setting towards how different that Donald Trump really was. And I think that in and of itself attracted a lot of people, because he didn't talk like George W. Bush or George Bush or Bill Clinton or Obama or Nixon or Carter or the Fords. He didn't talk presidential. And I think at first it brought a lot of appeal. People was interested in that approach because they thought, well, maybe this is the trick. Maybe this is going to be the guy that's going to turn this all around to the point that we can start to see some light at the end of the tunnel. But instead of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, what I am seeing, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of you can say the same thing, what I am seeing is chaos. What I am seeing is confusion. And the Bible that I read tells me that Satan is the author of confusion. Could you only imagine if you went into a church setting, a house of God, and you had this type of disruptions in the services from one service to another, to the point that you didn't know what was being said, you didn't know how it was going to be said, you didn't know if it was going to contradict what that they had already done promised or what that they had already done said. Could you only imagine the chaos that it would be in a church setting if you could compare a church setting to this political setting that we have been observing now for the past two and a half years? And like I said, at first, you kind of had sympathy for Obama. I mean, not Obama, but Mr. Trump. You kind of had sympathy for him because you knew that he was a beginner. And America has always rooted for the underdog. Somebody that you knew that probably wasn't going to win, but you was going to root for him anyway because you had a great deal of empathy or sympathy for him. And I think America at first kind of felt the same way. You know, here this guy is, you know, he's fresh on the block. He's not been spoiled with political interest. And maybe he can get it turned around. Maybe he can stop a lot of the nonsense and a lot of the backbiting and a lot of the throat cutting and slicing and dicing towards the forked tongue. But after this has come out, and after what I have heard today, and after I put all the dots together pertaining to the do's and the don'ts, as far as I am concerned, and I don't mean to be a doomsday preacher or a doomsday prophet or a doomsday messenger, but as far as I am concerned, this is what is going to be the last straw that's going to break the camel's back. This is going to be the deciphering moment to where people are going to pull away from all this hokey-pokey, unprofessional, unethical type behavior, to the point of reframing and looking at this in a completely different bubble. And people are going to say, what the hell kind of circus is this? And that's exactly what it has turned into. And of course, a lot of them said, before Donald Trump ever become president, regardless whether it was Republicans or Democrats, that this was going to be a circus. And you know what? Since I'm listening to Rudy Giuliani and all these other smear tactics and all these other people that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, this is exactly what it's turning into. It's turning into a three-ring circus. And at any given moment, we're waiting for the bearded lady or the two-headed calf, the freak show, to completely fulfill itself in front of the American people. Because I truly believe if the Fords, if the Nixons, if the Carters, if the Reagans, if the Bushes, if the Clintons, if the Obamas would have acted any such as this in the regard of all this hokey-pokey stuff going on, the American people would have laughed them completely off of the TV stages. They would have demanded for people to have resigned and go raise peanuts or make Billy beer or do something other than being a representative for the American people towards the American people's affairs. Because it's obvious you are not going forward. You're taking what little bit of step that it appears like that you're going forward, and in actuality you're going backwards. In other words, these people remind me of somebody climbing a cliff, and the cliff is real steep, and every now and then they'll get a good footing and they'll gain a couple of inches. But because the cliff is so steep and the cliff is muddy, the next thing you know, they'll reach for a root or they'll reach for a footing and they'll slide down 2 or 3 feet, maybe 10, 12 feet before they catch themselves again. After they catch themselves again, they'll get lucky every now and then and they'll gain another inch or two, but before long they'll slide back down some more. Well, we're steadily sliding down this cliff. And my question is this to the American people. What the hell is it going to be like once we get down to the bottom of it? Is it going to be civil war? Are we going to be taken over by another regime? Is somebody going to nuke us? Are we going to basically turn on each other to the point that there is no solution other than doom and gloom? What is going to be down at the bottom of the cliff? Because in actuality, that is the direction that we are heading in as an American citizens. And it's frightful because we have all these senior citizens, we have all these health issues, we're almost $23 trillion in debt, we have 2.3 million people incarcerated either in local, state, or federal jails. We have all these calamities, indifferences that we're dealing with. It's almost like watching a slow motion train wreck. Though the train isn't really going all that fast, you know the train cannot stop all that fast. And it's just a matter of time before the train is going to run off the tracks because there's been a major earthquake and the train tracks has been destroyed and there's not nothing left but a big cliff to go down. You know that the cliff is there. You know that the train tracks has been destroyed. You know that the train is still gaining a little bit of momentum in a way, but you also know that it's just a matter of time before it's going to get too close to that cliff that there'll be no way for it to stop. And once it exceeds that peak that suppresses us, then is whenever we're all doomed. This is no longer a laughing matter, folks. This is no longer something to entertain each other by comedy or being humorous. These are people's lives that are at stake. This is our future. This is our children's future and their future that we're dealing with here. And to see somebody like Giuliani get up there and contradict himself isn't the first politician that I've heard get on national TV and basically make a complete, total fool out of himself. That's going to be the end of this particular session pertaining to Whistleblower 2. Whistleblower 2. Good luck to all of us. Shalom.